Hello everyone, we are now on fan game panel 3 for Summer of RWBY. My name is Jin. I'm a developer for RWBY Requiem. And then here is my other friend here, Selikur. Talk.
Oh yeah, hello. My name is Selikur. I'm a professional game developer and I'm developing RWBY Requiem along with Jin, which is a 3D action RPG.
Alright, now Nintendo.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nintendo. I worked on the Ruby Rose for Rivals of Aether mod. We just had a panel earlier today. This is the RWBY fan game panel 3. This will be a good time. I'm super excited to be here. Are you guys? How are you guys feeling?
Feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Just watching all the talent of the community has been very inspiring for us at RWBY Requiem.
Nice. Awesome. We can hop right into things. Maybe what is it?
I could go.
We also
video.
Yep.
Questions.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say. Also, we'll have our videos playing as the live stream goes on. So we'll have the first bit is the videos from RWBY Requiem, and then I have my trailer playing in full after these play out.
So let me just skip to your game or your mod, so we can like ask the questions there and people will know about.
Yeah, sounds perfect.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Got any questions?
Okay, let me open it. So, John, Nintendo, we know that you have developed a mod for Rivals of Aether, right?
Yes, yeah, that's what this mod is for.
Yeah, okay. This mod is a 2D pixel art fighting game, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay, but the question always remains, okay, like, what could you do if you could create a fully fledged game?
Right, yeah, so that's definitely a dream, like, next step from this. A lot of people have been asking me, like, what RWBY characters I would add to Rivals next, and a lot of people asked me to do Weiss, Blake, and Yang after this. But while I was working on this project, it was definitely always a pie in the sky dream that like I'd be able to that like a future would be working on a fully fledged platform fighter. So I've definitely given it a fair amount of thought. And it's not as organized as like having a design doc yet or anything like that. But yeah, I definitely have a vision for it. So please remind me. With this question, are you looking for like characters or like structure of the game or like
I'm going to that. So tell us, which characters would you include in a game of that nature?
Yeah, so I was definitely considering a lot. Like RWBY has such a great and varied cast, as I'm sure you guys know. In your game already, you guys have Team RWBY and John playable, correct?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So one thing that's actually interesting, I think, about RWBY fan games is, and this is something that increases the scope on a lot of these, is, do you guys have like a little bit of that feeling, like when you guys were making Requiem, did you have that feeling too of like, oh, like you have to do RWBY, Weiss, Blake, Yang?
Yeah, that's actually one of the answers we got on our first post, because RWBY wasn't ready at that time, and they were mocking the game for not having RWBY. And that also happens with some of the most popular characters, like why isn't Penny here? Why isn't Neo here? Like some characters don't fit that very well some games, especially fighting games.
Yes, yeah. And what is it? I totally feel that. I actually have this just to skip ahead a little bit. I've always joked that if Crow was in a fighting game, he would have that meme of like, you guys know how in Super Smash Brothers Brawl characters would have a random chance of tripping, and that's like famously not liked. I think it would be really fun to give Crow that as a joke.
Yeah, for the bad luck.
Yeah, for the bad luck. Like if you're in a match with Crow, you have like a 1% chance of tripping every like walk. And it's like Crow can trip too, I think would be pretty funny. I don't know how much I'd commit to doing that, but that's like a funny mechanic I've always thought of. But yeah, no, to get
like an Easter egg, right?
Oh yeah, that could be like a good Easter egg as well, yeah.
Okay, so tell me, which features would you like to include in a game in the case you made it?
Yeah, so in a game like this, I to walk back a little bit, in terms of like characters and features for this, I would really be careful of scope, especially on the coming from the Rivals mod. That was very ambitious for like my first Rivals character. So instead of like it was very hard for me to do this, but I would almost like, and the reason I'm going back to this is because I really view like one of the biggest things that like people care about when it comes to fighting games or platform fighters is the characters. And I think your feature should really tie into them directly. So I would really have a lot of focus on a small cast that is like very interesting to play. So I really see it stemming from, Team RWBY playable, but it'd be like just because you need Team RWBY doesn't mean like you should go like really crazy on the roster size. So I'd limit the roster honestly for like a first attempt like this to 12 characters, and that might seem like, I don't know, what do you guys think of that number?
That's a ton of characters. That's a ton of characters.
Right.
Yeah, if they all have the same animation quality that you have in Rivals of Aether mod, that's going to take a long while.
Oh yeah, for sure. And and to skip ahead a little bit, like I don't even think, and this is like a big hypothetical game we're talking about. I think a RWBY platform fighter, I would envision it being 3D. I definitely love Rivals, and I would like to make more Rivals characters in the pixel art, because that just like came out so nice, and that style is amazing. But if we're starting from the ground up, and like we're making a whole new game here, I would especially want to make it 3D so that like characters can have like all of their alt costumes, like from Volume 1, from the Beacon era, the Mistral era, the Atlas era. I think that'd be something people would want to see. So yeah, to continue going through the cast a little bit, I really envision us like starting with Team RWBY, and from there I feel like let's see, I have my notes on who I was writing this down earlier on who I think would make that first 12. And the reason I limited it to 12, by the way, is because the original Smash Brothers 64 was 12 characters. So I was like, I feel like that's like a pretty good benchmark of, you shouldn't go like for a first game, like that's like a good amount of content. Even if at like, and that's like in the idea of like, this is like a real like big project for like an indie sort of game. So I had the idea that like it would, you'd have Team RWBY, and then I was thinking to build off of that, to get some villains on this roster. I was thinking Cinder and Neo are a must. I think Cinder's on it maybe like a little bit more of a pick from that I'm biased with, as some of the people watching the stream might be able to tell. But I think I was talking about this on my panel earlier. I think she has a ton of really cool platform fighter moveset potential. And also Neo's the other character that we've seen in a fighting game. So I know she's got like a ton of popularity behind her. I think people would really love to see her in a platform fighter as well. But yeah, before I continue, that's like half our roster. What do you guys think so far?
I
I think it looked.
roster is definitely very nice. The actual main plot of and then you add four, and then you also add the villains that truly like destroy the world.
Yeah.
Be able to use the heroes, villains to fight each other is a good thing.
Oh, for sure. And I think another like also the fact like this keeping the features in mind. I think you want to have like when you're working with, and I'll get to like my actual plans on this in a second, but when it comes to like the story mode or the other modes of the game, I think you want like characters that naturally have conflicts with each other. Have you guys run into that at all with like Requiem?
At this current moment, we haven't added like the main enemies. We've added Grim, as we don't really have the models. Will eventually.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that makes total sense. Yeah.
I don't know. Someone said I was very quiet. My bad.
So yeah, that's our half of our roster. I see some people in the chat say like that you can make Neo the Shang Tsung. I think Neo would definitely be like a very fun character to have like copy other characters. She can work a lot like Kirby, honestly, like where she like copies their other characters like Neutral B. Someone Nalek says Cinder might be busted because she can fly. I think that'd be very funny. That'd be pure developer bias if I did something like that. But yeah, going from there, the next two characters I was like, oh, we should do them is Crow and Winter. And that's because I kind of view them. I think they're two very popular characters in the fandom. But I also think like when you're making a game of like still even 12 characters is a lot. I think Crow and Winter can borrow from Ruby and Weiss's design a little bit. Like I'm a big fan of when platform fighters or just fighting games in general can have similar characters but not like clone characters, if that makes sense. Like they build off of like similar design ideas, but they find their way to be unique with it. Do you guys understand what I'm saying with that?
Yeah, totally. Like you have like a baseline of a character, like a character with a sight, and then you can modify the different attacks based on the character, like make them unique later on.
Yeah, for sure. And Crow and Ruby can share like a fair amount of scythe moves, but like for example, like Crow has he has a sword that's unique to him, and he has his ability to turn into a bird. I think Crow's ability to turn into a bird would be a very fun up special for recovering. Where he might be like very weak in that form, but also he's like very fast and able to move around quickly. So yeah, I think that puts us at 8. Those are we've almost filled out the roster entirely. I'm now realizing I put down 10 characters. So I will fill this in very quickly, and you guys might be surprised who I put in for this last set. I also should mention this is a little bit inspired from. You guys know how Arrowfell is takes place in volume set like around volume 7 episode 3. Like there's like a montage I think in that episode, and Team Kirby said that they like specifically did that so that so that they can do like spin-offs and like other things in that section.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I recall it.
Yeah, so I whenever I think about this hypothetical fan game, I always think of it as like taking place during that time and using locales from it. So I also I consider the next two characters I would add would be John and Ironwood. I think John is a really good foil for Ruby and can also like make for a very unique platform fighter character. I think there's some cool stuff you do with his shield. He can be a little bit more defensive than a lot of characters on the roster. And Ironwood also like he could play a dual role of like a hero and a villain. I think in some of this story mode. So yeah, we've almost completed this, which just goes to show you like how hard it is to like still to do a roster of this size with the RWBY cast. Did you guys see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before I talk about these final two, do you guys have any thoughts on this roster so far?
I think it looks great. Like, for example, having John, you could have more options for a more, as you said, a more defensive style, a bit more slower compared to Ruby and Crow. But yeah, I think the cast is great.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And real quick, for Ishmar in chat, I think Ike and Marth are still a little too different for what I was mostly talking about. I think Marth and Roy is like a good example of like they do share like some moves similarities, but Marth has the very cool thing with his Echo Fighters or clones that it very inherently changes how you fight with them. Like Marth being stronger at the tip of his blade versus Roy who's stronger at the hilt. That really changes how you play them, especially in like games like Smash Ultimate, where they both have a place on the roster. Yeah. Nalix says Y is a secret unlockable. I think that would be hilarious. I like the idea of Zwei and Oobleck as a tag fighter, who fight together. But spoilers for the final two I have here. I don't think Oobleck can really fit in this a game like this. But anyways, not to drag this on too much longer. The final two I hadn't written down was this was very tough. Because I kind of had someone else written down, and then I realized I had a bit of a glaring omission. I put down originally Tyrion and Salem. And I was thinking, like, I think Tyrion's a really underrated character. I think he's, like, he just has, like, a lot of screen presence and really works as an antagonist. And I think he'd be very fun to see as, like, a manic, like, sort of fighting game character. And especially with this, like, robot, like, his, like, cybernetic tail, like, I think, like, you do so much with that. But I had to move him off the roster because I was like, oh my god, I'm doing this and I don't have Penny on here. So I would say my final two and that 12 I wrote down were Penny and Salem. So yeah, that's the characters I would see that would work on this. Do you guys think I have any glaring omissions, or is there anyone on here that you're like that you guys are looking at and you really want to design like for your game or something like that?
I feel like when looking at like roster, with what you just I think he is probably one of the best embodiments of like an actual villain, or like he doesn't have any practical emotion with. As you look at like Cinder, you know she has like child issues, right? She had a lot of abuse problems as like. Wow, with Tyrion, we don't really have like a huge backstory on him, but yet he doesn't like care, you know? He definitely gives off the vibe of like, oh yeah, I'll kill anyone I want, but like, who cares? I don't have any emotions. I only serve Salem. So I feel like as like a true villain, Tyrion is probably one of the best villains in all of RWBY. I am kind of confused on how like Salem would have worked in your mod, as she doesn't actually really use any weapons. You know?
We haven't saw her fight, right?
Yeah, but she doesn't really use weapons in a way. She uses more magic. I don't know if anyone in the game that you mod on has any magic, so or like use probably like projectiles and such. But Salem is definitely like an interesting pick for character to fighter, unless you just plan on making a projectile based fighter.
You know that you bring up a really good point. I do think we haven't seen Salem fight too much yet. And if she were like on this roster, she wouldn't. She would definitely need to lean more into being a projectile fighter. So that definitely presents an issue with her as a character. And who knows, like if this was a real game that like was in development, I could really foresee like us trying to like develop her and then say like, oh, I don't know how much this works, maybe we should pivot and like try somebody else. But that said, that actually is a great segue into a feature I think I would maybe want to do on this game. So RWBY in my Rivals mod has this mechanic where she has 3 projectiles. She has her neutral special, her forward strong, and her back air. And the thing is that let's see. All of those are tied to 1 meter, her like ammo bar. And whenever she uses a projectile, her ammo bar is like drained completely and it has to recharge before she uses another projectile. I did that so that like as a character in that game she wouldn't be too projectile heavy. And that is something I would really consider bringing over to the platform fighter space. Because I think RWBY characters like they're it's very awesome how all of their weapons are also guns, you know, like that's a big appeal of the show, and that you'll see people like in the fandom spaces really implement that in their projects as well. But I think in fighting games, like everybody's seen those, like, you know, those, they always joke about Mortal Kombat guns, where it's like some characters just like they give gun moves and then it's like they full screen shoot the other characters, and people get like upset at that. That's something I definitely would want to try to avoid. And to wrap back around to what we said about Salem, that could be something that proves to be difficult with her as a character that is mostly projectiles. So yeah, that's definitely a mechanic. That's a mechanic or a feature I would definitely consider making a big part of the DNA of this game.
Okay.
I see. I understand where it comes from. Like, we are also developing like a shooting mode for our game, and we have that exact same problem. Like, do we make it another moveset? How busted is it going to be? It's really messy, and sometimes you have to cut that thing out.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting because, and I could be wrong, but I haven't seen too many mods or games where RWBY characters are in an FPS. Have you guys ever seen any of those?
Nah.
My paladins.
Does Paladins have a first-person mode?
Yes.
Gotcha. For whatever reason, oh wait, no, I'm sorry, I remember. Yeah, okay, that is true, but it's like I can't believe I forgot that. I've literally played Paladins for the RWBY skins. Yeah, that's actually funny that you mention it, but even in that case, it's like Paladins is still like a hero shooter. I feel like it's also very interesting like how RWBY works in Paladins, because she likes, even then it's not really like she's using her scythe like,
Yeah, they're just
like
skins, actual characters.
Right, yeah, like she's swinging her scythe around and she's not shooting anyone with it. It's just like it's like red streaks coming off her scythe. I think it's because of the base character that she's the skin for. And also Blake is very interesting in that game. Blake, she has her base character has that thing where like you send the coin out and then you shoot the coin and then like trick shot people with that. But anyways, the point I was going to make was like I feel like a big part of RWBY's identity is the it's also a gun, with all of their weapons. So balancing around like the gunplay and then also like the weapon combat is a big thing that you know game developers have to overcome with this series.
I do have like a huge problem with this too, because Celica actually wanted a more FPS like system with the weapons in our game, but I definitely stumbled upon of like issues such as it's just like our game's like a fast action. Imagine switching from fast action to a gun. It slows you down away,
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of like proves a lot of problems with us having to make the gameplay fast and then turn it to be slow. We shouldn't be able to do that, or we shouldn't make something take away a lot of core factors and works with everything else.
Yeah, it's a mess, especially with animations.
No, I totally feel you on that. But yeah,
Okay, so if you were to create this game, Nintendo, could you create the art yourself like you did with your mod?
yeah. So I actually didn't create the art for the mod myself.
I saw you on the panel. You were like creating the first versions of RWBY.
Oh yes. So I began I began making the art at the beginning. But at some point uh I commissioned an artist who was more experienced in the Rivals workshop to create the pixel art. Uh I'm more of a game designer and a project manager by trade. So that is probably where I would like find more of myself in like overseeing the project and finding the like I have a big focus on trying to like have your game feel like a very complete package. And what I mean by that is like I worked on another Steam game, or I worked on the Steam game called Danger Ducklings. It's a puzzle game about two not so bright ducks that are trying to get through their 9 to 5. One thing that we did on that game that was a big focus was having each like of the mechanics like really flow well together, and like not making a mechanic that like, oh, you used it once and then it's like it's gone, because I think especially on small teams it could be a big waste of development time. So not to go on too much of a tangent, but that that is more where my strength lies. And yeah. I should use this opportunity also to ask, when it comes to RWBY Requiem, what do you guys do on the game? Like what are your specialties?
I'm a programmer and a art director technically for it. At least I hope I want to be.
Okay, I'm mostly the programmer of the game. I code all the features, AI, animation stuff, basically everything.
Nice. All right, I'm excited to dive more into that in the second half of the panel. But yeah, so you guys both have like a little bit of technical background.
Yeah, me too.
Nice.
Okay.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
No, sorry. I was going to segue to the next thing. Please take it from there.
Okay, so thinking about your game, do you think it will be nice to add multiplayer to it, or is it too big of a challenge?
Oh, for sure. Like I think I think so. I haven't done a game with multiplayer yet, like that I had to build in the team myself. Rivals was very nice, and I think this is a great part of working on a mod. Rivals just has online built into it already. So if two people download your character, they can use it online, no problem. That was nothing I had to worry about. But yeah, I definitely think online would be a necessity for this game. Even though I view it as like a bit of a challenge for smaller teams, and especially like new like projects like this, figuring out that net code and how to make it work for people can be like, I'm sure, a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, especially with latency.
For sure.
Okay. So, this game, if it were come to be released, will it include a storyline?
Yes. So this is one of the features I would. This is probably one of the features I'm most excited to talk about. I really like the idea of trying to make a platform fighter where you get a lot out of the classic mode of the game. So I really like the idea of using the characters that are included in your roster to build classic modes for each of the characters, and making them more interesting for players to run through with each character. I'd want to, the way I'd approach a mode like this is a combination of Melee's adventure mode, where like you have some stages that you can like run through, and Smash Ultimate's classic mode, where each character has like a set 6 fights that are specifically tailored around them. I think it'd be very fun to see like this is the first thing that comes to my head, but Cinder having like to fight, John and Team RWBY for like her set of matches, I think would be very fun. And each character can have like a sort of rival. Like I can imagine like something funny like with like Crow's first match being against Winter to call back to their Volume 3 fight. And then ending with Crow versus Tyrion, because they have history, to say the least. But yeah.
Okay. So, which do you think will be the most complicated feature to create for the game?
Honestly, I think making the game fun and stand out would be the most complicated thing to do. Designing RWBY for Rivals of Aether was a challenge enough, and that was just one character. I think designing 12 interesting characters would be a much bigger like undertaking, and you also see this with like a lot of Smash like clones now. I don't know if Smash clones is the right word, but like other platform fighters, like Nick All-Star Brawl 1 really differentiated from Smash, and so did Rivals of Aether. But you see like their sequels lean a little bit more to its roots. Like with Rivals 2 now has like ledges where Rivals 1 didn't. I think finding ways to differentiate yourself from a game that has such a monopoly on the genre poses its own unique challenges, but I also think like it makes it all the more exciting to like try out new stuff with what has worked before.
Yeah, I can totally understand. So, you told us you developed a game for Steam, right? Which
Correct.
engine did you use?
Yeah, so for that game on Steam, I used Unity engine.
Oh, okay. So, if you were to make this game, this RWBY fighting game, could you use the same engine?
Yeah, so it's tough because I have the most experience in Unity. I actually went to school for interactive media design, and all of our curriculum was in Unity. But Unity has obviously come under fire with some of the things they've tried to do over the last couple of years. So I think it would really depend on what the strength of the team is. If most of us have worked in Unity before, or if the team is more centered out on Unreal, like I wouldn't mind trying out Unreal. And yeah, I think I can be very flexible in that sort of space. Because some of the best projects will come from you learning something new. What I was gonna say, I never like really worked in Game Maker before making Ruby and Rivals of Aether, and that was a really great learning experience.
Okay. I think I recall an engine specially designed for 2D fighting games, which is Mugen engine.
Mugen, yes.
Yeah, that could also be useful. Okay, so if you can give any advice to anyone who may want to start their own game or their own Ruby fan game or their own mod, what advice would you give them?
Honestly, I would say, I would say it's a very tough balance between scope and what you can do at your current level. So like one issue I ran into the Ruby project was that was definitely over scope and very ambitious with doing Ruby first for that game. Have you guys ever heard the phrase of like you make 20 bad games before you make one good one?
Yeah, it applies to most of the developers.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I actually learned something very interesting on sorry guys, 1 second. Jin is just going to be right back. But yeah, while he's gone, we'll just continue going through this. Where was I? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
About the advices for the developers.
Yes. Okay, so I was saying you make 20 bad games before you make a good one. I was talking with a friend of mine about this, and they were like, sometimes those 20 bad games are the same game that you've just made over and over again. And there were definitely multiple versions of Ruby for Rivals. That old version of Ruby you saw that I was doing the art for, she was a bit of a mess. She needed a lot of work. So where I'm going with this, like the advice, the takeaway I would say is don't be afraid to scale back your projects and do what you can now, because you're still making progress. You're just sort of not like going as hard on yourself as you might have like set out originally. So like for my panel earlier, I was actually making a video on Ruby's development. And I'd been working on this video the last like month and a half, and it just like on Wednesday I was like, I know this isn't going to be ready in time for Saturday, unfortunately. So what I did instead was I retrofitted it to be a presentation instead. And I still think it went about as good as it could have earlier. But that was definitely a decision informed by experience in trying to force a project to be ready before it's not, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a bit about inspirations. Which of the currently existing fighting games do you think will fit the best for a Ruby fighting game?
Ooh, that's tough.
Back.
Welcome back, Jin.
Hey, welcome back, Jin.
Yeah, so I don't honestly on this one. I definitely like to hear if you guys have any opinions on this. But I think they did a very smart thing with having Ruby be a part of Blaze Blue cross tag battle. Because I think that was an anime fighter that really fit Ruby's vibe. I could also see Ruby characters working in something like Guilty Gear Strive. I think there would be like it'd be so amazing to see like a Ruby crossover fighter in that. I don't I don't think Ruby works as well in like she wouldn't work in a Street Fighter. I think people would go crazy if they had to deal with Crescent Rose in a Street Fighter with like how disjointed it would be. But and I also don't think Ruby characters would work as well in a Tekken maybe. But there's been a lot of buzz about Tifa being in Tekken 8. In terms of like people really wanting her for it. So I think you could see like I think Yang could work really well for a Tekken 8. And I've realized now I'm turning this into like which fighting game do I want to see Ruby characters in. But yeah, I honestly like a big fandom dream for a while was that Arc System Works was going to make a Ruby 2D fighter in the vein of a Blaze Blue. And I honestly I think like that's an area where the fandom is totally fair in. Like I think that would be really cool to see.
Okay, okay. Okay, so do you have any more questions, Jean, about Nintendo's project?
I don't think so. But for the whole question about like seeing, or the whole thing about seeing like Ruby, the reasons why you can't see them in Tekken or Fighter is mainly because of the fact that they're kind of like fist fighters, not like weapon fighters most of the time.
Exactly.
So the reasons why like Guilty Gear or Blaze Blue, they work well because they have characters that even wield like giant weapons already.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I do see how you think that Arc System Works could 100% work with a Ruby on the Ruby title. They have already with Arrowfell, but it's like not the 2D fighter you want exactly. But in a way, like it could be really cool to see them already in 100% seeing the main floor, because the fast thing of the game and the way that they use weapons, it does match well with how the
For sure, yeah. And I think that's also like to go along with what I was saying, like, you know, Yang is our true fisticuffs character, whereas Ruby, Weiss, and Blake they have their swords and their scythe. I feel like making a game that works for all four Ruby girls is it's easier to do than to make all four Ruby girls work in any one game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they just don't fit all of the games.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing I'll always praise Ruby for is how unique its four main characters are.
Yeah.
I think their weapons definitely give them their personalities as a character in general. Were to take those out completely, wouldn't be that character. It's just an attachment to how what they are.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I'm more of a Mortal Kombat guy, so I can imagine some of the fatalities some of our favorite Ruby characters will make. They look awesome, at least in my mind.
You know, what's actually really funny is I've heard people want Ruby, you know, before the travesty of her being leaked for Fortnite, or not Fortnite, leaked for multiverses through Pickle Rick, which I've been joking about that with my friends. I'm like, of all characters to be leaked by, it's Pickle Rick. Like, come on. I think before Multiverses was the talk of the town for Ruby, I saw a lot of buzz for a Ruby character in Injustice, and I think that would be very interesting to see.
That
I don't know.
would, because of the fact of the Justice League series with the whole crossover. I think it would work well. It's just like you'd have to also give them a whole new story to go along with, since it's Justice, not just the.
Yeah, and I know that was like more talked about when Ruby was, or Rooster Teeth was like still kicking and like owned by Warner Brothers. But even like I have a hard time picturing them in that game, because Injustice uses like a realistic style that's so undifferent, like that's so different to anything we've seen RWBY in before. I have a soft spot for the Injustice series. I think it'd be really cool to see them in there. I just have a hard time envisioning it personally myself.
Just kind of see pummeled by all these overly godly type beings. Even the Ninja Turtles, I think, were in the Injustice game, so like it makes sense.
Yeah, they were in Injustice 2. I think the crossover characters were them and Hellboy. And I also think Sub-Zero was in from Mortal Kombat, which was very cool to see. So yeah. To close this off on too, I will say, Celiker, to go back to what you were saying about the Mortal Kombat fatalities, if Rooster Teeth wanted to lose it with Crescent Rose, like I feel like there's a million, like the fatality possibilities with Crescent Rose are literally endless.
Yeah, I'm very cool.
All right, nice. Did you guys have? Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, do you guys have any more questions, or do you want to hop into talking about your game a little bit?
I don't have any.
I don't have any more questions either. I don't know if you want to ask the chat about it.
Yeah. So before we go on, I opted to talk a little bit about like this hypothetical because I know this was a little bit of a running theme throughout the summer of RWBY. Before we move on to talk about RWBY Requiem, do you guys want to talk about the Rivals project at all a little bit more, or do you guys have questions for me on any of the topics we discussed?
I had some questions before, but you told me that you were answering them on your panel, so
Let's
I don't
see.
know.
I can always like go over them a little bit here. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, yeah. If I haven't talked about them at all yet, please feel free to ask away.
Okay, so one of the questions I wanted to ask was, why a RWBY mod as opposed to any other IPs, you know?
Oh yeah, so really, RWBY is just such a special series to me. I think it's so inspirational. It has a lot of creativity both in its world and its character design and all that. It really comes out of like really being a huge fan of RWBY, and the possibilities being endless for her. I also think like for as much as like I do really like RWBY's character. It's hard for me to say if she's like my favorite. Honestly, like I like a lot of the RWBY characters a lot. But the reason I did her first over like Weiss, Blake, or Yang, or like Cinder or Crow is because I really felt like the best way to not only represent RWBY but represent like Remnant as a whole would be through RWBY herself, if that makes sense.
Okay. So let me check a little bit. What would you say was the biggest pitfall you encounter in your fan game? Well, your mod in this case.
Yeah, so the biggest pitfall I fell under was for too long I was like, oh yeah, her down B is gonna be switching the dust, and we'll figure out the dust as we go along. And that just like made things way too complicated. Because some dusts were like half finished, some dust like we kept going back and forth on what we wanted to do with. And it like led to really mushy game design. Like it was hard for me to say like, oh yeah, here's why this dust exists as an option. So like the way I like sort of think about it now is like ice, electric, and gravity dust all like sort of ended up being for combos. So we cut ice and electric dust and just kept gravity because you really weren't losing anything and it just made our lives easier. And fire dust was very boring at the start because it just lit people on fire and did like a little bit of knockback. So we ended up with the two dust types. We were just like, okay, we're gonna have gravity for combos and fire for hitting hard. So we got rid of stone, which used to be the hitting hard dust, and we put that on fire. And yeah, once we figured that out, things were a lot easier. When you're making like a fighting game character, I found if you don't have their core mechanic or like their gimmick figured out like before you really get deep into development, that's just gonna cause like that's just delaying the headache for you, and it's gonna make things way harder later.
Yeah, we're actually having some problems with that in Ruby Requiem. Like, a lot of characters have a preset element which they apply to enemies when hitting them. So if we introduce the dust mechanics, the element system is worth nothing. So the design process is being really messy. Like you really have to think things very carefully, or you are going to code features that you are not going to use at the end and waste a lot of time.
Yeah, and that sort of makes mechanics like step on each other's toes, and like overlap in ways that, you know, could just be like make things more confusing for the player and then also more confusing for you. So you have an example of like what element does Ruby like attach to enemies?
Ruby applies a new element called Puras. It's like a silver eye element. It reacts with the darkness element of other characters like Neo or Blake.
I got you. So,
yeah. But if we introduce the dust mechanic, she'll have a lot more elements available. So it kind of messes up all the element system.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but does the original element system, not the dust, but the original element system, that's derived from Genshin Impact, right?
Yep.
Got you. I see. So, in a way, like, it's tough because I could see why you'd want to keep that original element system when it can lead to a lot of unique possibilities, like, the using Ruby Silver Eyes in a very interesting way. But also, like, I can see the want to include dust in some capacity. So, yeah. Do you guys like have an idea of like any ideas for how you're gonna handle that, or is that still something very much in the works?
I have no idea how to handle that yet. I don't know if Jean thinks about it.
With how like the elements are, I feel like with the base element just comes with the character, right? It's changed by a new. I feel like with the dust system, it'd be more interactable with weapons, right? Because I mean, like the characters can't naturally like use dust. It's like because it's not magic. They have to use like a tool to use weapons, right? So it wouldn't like ruin the whole factor, but most of the dust also just happens to work more so with to their semblance, their guns, not with actual. At least not that I've seen much on the series. The dust does not actually affect the attacks itself. So my idea is we can still keep the elements. It's just that the dust will more weapon semblance.
I got you. Yeah, I do think sometimes this might be like an unspoken thing that like gets caught up in fan games a little bit. Is RWBY does have a lot to juggle when it comes to character movesets and design. So like characters have semblances and dust, and RWBY has her silver-eyed powers, and how does that affect aura? It can be a lot to juggle, I think, and that's part of what made when I designed RWBY for my game like so much fun. Like it felt like there was such a high like amount of possibilities, but in a way, it can also be very overwhelming. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, from seeing how me and Celica are developing, a lot of like the actual like core features that RWBY already has in there, to try to develop that all into a whole Genshin is very difficult, as like there's already set in features that are technically part of the games already, but having to adapt to make it work properly and everything is very confusing. How would I make this work alongside with this thing in RWBY? Make sure that I don't have to remove something important. Like it.
Right, of course.
Yeah. Well, things can work together, right? But that doesn't mean they are balanced. That
For
also
sure.
includes a whole world of problems on its own. So we may have to cut the element system then.
Yeah, and I think that would lead to a lot of like it sounds like elements are a very rigid system, where it's like, oh, RWBY must have the power that's specifically tied to her silver eyes. Where if you like switch it to like a dust system, then theoretically like any character can use any dust. So like I don't know if you guys would want to do that, but like the design possibilities like expand themselves from there. Obviously, there's there's pros and cons to either situation. I definitely feel for you guys. I've been there before. Best of luck with that, of course.
Thank you.
Real quick, if we want to catch up with the chat, Ishmaru has been saying, let's see, network rollback as a method for getting around late latency in fighting games. Yeah, rollback net code is super important, and it's like it's the thing people really point towards for the best Wi-Fi experience. Hello everybody that was joining us. And not all semblances are useful in certain genres. I totally agree with that. I think it's funny because I think Yang's leans or is very good for a lot of games. Like she has the very simple comeback mechanic, but figuring out how to make, like I said this earlier, but figuring out how to make Crow semblance work in any way that like isn't a joke of making people trip is like tough sometimes.
It will actually be very simple in our game.
How do you envision it?
You have a reduced chance of getting treasure from chest.
Oh, that's really funny.
Well, that may lead to people not using Crow, but it will use their semblance, I think.
It'd be very interesting if you guys made it like sort of a semblance that was good for grinding. Like maybe you have a reduced chance to get like good drops, but because of that you get like more quote unquote like common items when you're using Crow.
Oh, what I envisioned was you have the drop chance reduced, but you find more enemies, and enemies drop items.
Oh.
So it balances out, kind of.
I really like that idea. I think that could be like a lot of fun to use with that idea. Ishmaru also says John in a 1v1 fighting game would be very useful. And I totally agree. He is the poster child for like, I don't know how I'd make his semblance work in a fighting game. But yeah. Seliker, did you have any other questions?
I don't think so. Is there anything you want to talk about your mod?
I guess I could very briefly touch on the animation at the start of it, and then we can swap to talking to the questions that we're going to ask you guys. That animation is something I think works very well for the context of this trailer. The whole idea behind it is Ruby going back to visit the grave from the Red trailer. And I thought that worked very well for the context of this trailer. Combining I don't know how familiar with Rivals of Aether you guys might be, but we also combined the Rivals of Aether characters with the design sensibilities you'd get with Grim. So I thought that was also something that we were really proud of and really made for a true like crossover element for RWBY and Rivals of Aether. So yeah, before we get going to your guys' stuff, do you have any thoughts on that?
What's in my head?
I got you. All right, cool. Here, let me pull up the questions that I've prepared for you guys. Yep, Seliker just took a moment to step away. We can either get started with the questions, Jin, if you want to start us off with it, or you can wait for him to come back, whichever you guys would prefer.
Yeah, if there are some questions that I can't answer, I'll just say it.
All right, cool. Let's get going with it again. Then, oh, Seliker's back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, so I forgot if you guys mentioned this, but is this project your first venture with indie game development, or you have previous experience?
For me, it's not my first. I have done like random developments at this point, never finished them. This is also not my first ever development either. I previously had like ambition when I first got into, which is honestly like 2-3 years ago. After like finishing volume to like volume 5, I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to make a RWBY game, and I decided to like work on a little like 3D one as we're working on right now. It's basically in the same sense as the game that we're working on right now. But I never technically fully got into it because I was like, it's a lot of work. I'm by myself. I can like do most of like the artwork and stuff like that. Coding, I'm still like kind of a noob at that, you know? So I kind of like gave up on that project. Now I'm here.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I kind of the same as Jean. I started up, well, I ended up college and started making my own projects, which I also didn't finish. I eventually got into the game development industry, and with the recent layouts there have been currently in the game industry, I got the time to create this RWBY fan game. So I have quite some experience developing games professionally and also in my free time.
Nice. All right, cool. So is the team for RWBY Requiem, is it just you guys, or is anyone else working on the project as well?
So right now for programmers, it's just me and Celiker. For art, new models and such, it's me and a friend I invited. I haven't told Celiker who they are, but I told them that I found someone. But they're also a good 3D modeler too. And then we also have the UI designer, Gunnar. Then we have a rigger, Aj, a writer too. I've never actually interacted with them.
Yeah. Well, some of them joined at a time where this project wasn't really that polished yet. So, well, Steam kind of run out. They maybe don't feel as motivated anymore in the project, so they're kind of ghosting us.
Oh, that's too bad.
So,
Yeah.
technically, main people who are developing it is me and Celiker here.
Yeah, for now.
How do you guys go about working on the project? Something that we tried to do was set aside like a schedule, like for the trailer animation specifically. The team that made that met every Sunday night for like 2.5 hours. Do you guys have like a scheduled time like that too, or is it more like in your free time?
That's really hard to achieve since a lot of things are kind of streamlined. I cannot guarantee to have a feature coded so that the riggers can deal with some of the rigging, or the UI designer having things ready together with my code. So it's kind of hard to estimate that. So no, we don't have a schedule system.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we kind of just like work whenever we feel like it. So with no like technical time, we basically do everything on our free time or whenever we.
Well, at least I work at least 4 hours a day on the project.
Got you. Yeah.
So we do work a couple hours on the project all the time. Not every single day, of course, but we try our best to keep outputting more stuff into it. As I'm mainly doing the art stuff, I haven't really done all the coding yet. Only some of them, mainly for the UI stuff. But I'm currently trying to get work on dedicated models for.
I got you. So right now you're using the Paladins models.
Yeah, we're
right?
using the Paladins models currently for placeholders.
Yeah, and everyone hates them.
I think the Paladins models are like, I think they fit in the context of Paladins, like that style that they have.
Well, yeah.
But I think that said, they're highly stylized, so it's hard to like they don't lend themselves to being placeholders as well. Would you guys agree?
No. So for the style that we're making the game visually, like we have like a more obviously anime-esque style. So having to have like a fully stylized character like that of RWBY, where it doesn't actually look like RWBY, our understanding, it's like it doesn't match with us. Doesn't match with the lighting that we're doing and everything. Since Paladins is more like a PBR style game, so they have like all the more realistic lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why the texture more like that. So yeah, it does not look like matched very well. I think the only model that kind of like matches it on.
And that makes sense because what's John's model from?
I think it's just a model, or it's like an MD model, or I think it's from really. I didn't.
It's the MMD model.
Okay.
I basically just use the Paladins model because they have a rigging compatible with Unity.
Ah, so did that make like bringing them in not too bad?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, and I mean, I think that makes total sense. Like, especially it's tough when you're in the phase of like placeholders because when you're working on a fan game like this that's like showcasing stuff, people might like say like, oh, that doesn't fit. Well, it's not really supposed to yet.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that said, how long do you guys have been working on this project?
I've been working on this project for about a month now. At least I think so. Back.
Yeah, I think it's a month. Okay, so this project, I think I started it last year on August, so it's almost a year.
Also, it's going to be like a year soon.
Yep. Well, it also includes little bits and pieces from other games I never completed, so it could be more time than that.
What do you want to like go into that at all? Like what other bits and pieces are in this game?
Yeah, the inventory system, the ability system, and the movement system are things I created for another game. Oh, this game also started kind of like a Dark Souls game, but I got feedback from people that it doesn't really fit Ruby, so I changed it.
Yeah, I actually think I remember seeing you say that this game uh was leaning towards Dark Souls like a bit ago. Um that's I can understand why that switch makes sense. Um when what how do you feel about making that switch to like it's a little bit of a genre switch, would you say?
Yeah, every time I see the amount of work I have to do for this game, I kind of get discouraged. Like, if this was a Souls game, maybe it could be already on the beta stage.
I understand. I honestly I think I understand where people are coming from. I think one thing that's very interesting about Ruby is the like relation the characters have to the Grim, and what I mean by that is uh in Ruby, like characters are so all like usually taking down these like giant Grim monsters aren't really the biggest threat of any particular season. It has to be like a really big Grim um to pose like a major threat to our characters. Um and did your Dark Souls game did um did it primarily have like Grim as enemies?
Yeah, I actually wanted to make some of the big green, like Dark Souls bosses.
I think that'd be really cool, especially with like the sea serpent or even like the whale Grim. I think that'd be really cool to see.
Yeah, also the Death Stalker.
Yes. Oh my god, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and the Nevermore. Like, it really fits a Dark Souls style, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it totally does. I do think it, and I want to see if this is something you guys would agree with. I think where maybe some that feedback where it kind of the difficulty behind that feedback is like I think like it's hard to see like Ruby or any of the characters we know um like struggle with Grim in a Souls like. But I feel like if like you had an original character that was maybe just starting out as a huntsman, or maybe he's like in an isolated part of Remnant, where the Grim are like really tough there, and it's just him. I could see that like fitting a Dark Souls setting very well, but obviously it's that's a whole other project entirely at that point.
Yeah, I was thinking about making it like a post-Salem Wars remnant.
Mm.
That could be interesting, more dark.
Yeah, and I think that could fit Dark Souls very well. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Dark Souls like a lot of those games are like like they have settings where it's like, oh, the fire has been taken away, or the light has been taken away, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat asks, gotta ask, was the previous version really Souls like or just hard?
it was really Souls-like. You had the original mechanics of a Souls-like, like the evade, the block, the parry. You actually could equip any weapon on the show. You could equip Crimson Rose, Jones, Crochet Morse, Gamble Shroud, Mirton Aster.
And
It was a Souls-like.
and I know we were talking about this earlier, but ha- how did like guns in that version of this game work?
They kind of activated a third-person shooter mode, and depending on the dust you had equipped, it will fire a projectile with infusion elements.
Got you. Yeah, because that's another thing I could see, like, kind of as an aspect of RWBY that runs a little friction against a Souls-like, is I know in Souls-like games, like, projectiles are pretty limited, right?
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
just like the crossbows, right?
Yeah, I believe so. And, like, maybe, like, some magic spells?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have crossbows, bows, and the magic spells, but I think you cannot aim the magic spells.
Gotcha. Alrighty, so honestly, with that in mind, I also was wondering, um, is there any reason in particular you were drawn to, making a RWBY fan game in particular, as to like working with another IP or your own indie game in either as a Souls like or as this like sort of Genshin like?
This game started at the end of Volume 9, kind of. And, well, I really liked Volume 9, so it's kind of a personal attachment to RWBY series that I decided to make this game. And also, well, I don't have a lot of portfolio as a game developer on my personal profile. There's nothing I can really feel proud about. So this game is what that is all about.
Nice. Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. I'm also a very big fan of Volume 9. I think they did a really good job with that. So with that said, what achievement from this game do you think you're most proud of so far?
I mean, it's not released yet, so I can't really feel proud yet of anything. I think the movement system looks quite nice. But, well, you know, when you create something, only you kind of get all the mistakes that you have committed. Like other people may see it and say, "Oh, that's okay, that's cool, I will play it." But when you develop it, it doesn't feel as good. Maybe it could feel better. There's like something else that's missing all the time.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from with that. Like honestly, like when you mention the movement system, like I think that makes total sense. Like I look at that and I say like, oh wow, it's like really cool how you have Yang blasting around. That's very true to her character. And then also I'm like very like I see you have Blake swinging with her with Gamble Shroud and the ribbon on it, and I'm honestly pretty impressed that you're able to like get a version of that working. Because that doesn't seem like to be something that's like very easy to do. Uh, but along with that, I can imagine that there's things where you're like, oh, I would love to tweak that like this way, or especially on projects that are still in development. Like there's certain things you want to do with it before it like really goes live, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that feature, the Gamble Shroud rope, it did took a while. Yeah, maybe that. I don't know.
Maybe that's the one you're most proud of.
I will not say proud, but I think it's cool.
I think it's pretty cool. It looks really cool. But yeah, Let's see. Were there any non-Ruby and non-Genshin inspirations you incorporated into this project?
We do plan on trying to make the combat system DMC high. Mainly because of the fact that this is a fast-paced fighter game. I want it to be fast, but you also get penalties by not actually getting knocked back as a 3D fighter game. Because I don't want this in general, we don't want this game to be hard. Or not, no, easy, I mean. We don't want this easy, right? So the enemies will still take damage, but they will be able to attack back. So I'm just trying to do fight style than actual.
Got you. Yeah, and that seems like it's a good mix. I haven't played a DMC game before, but I from the vibes I get, it feels like it shares a little bit of DNA with RWBY. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, because other inspirations are Wuthering Wing, which is basically has the DMC fighting style. So kind of just like it's like do this. I think it makes a match very well with how fast these characters are attacking while still being able to have time.
Gotcha.
Okay, so one of the inspirations at the beginning was Dark Souls. And I really don't like a lot the DMC like games. It feels like a lot of button mashing, and I personally don't enjoy that. So we are yet to arrive to a point where we can start balancing things out in the game. But that is something that might change.
Got you. So it's still something you're like trying to find the balance of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're still trying to figure out like most of the ways that we out.
I got you. Let's see. Uh, is what game engine do you use for this game? Oh, nice. Has Unity like been a good fit for this game, or have you ever found yourself wanting to switch engines?
I'm gonna be honest, like Unity's the only engine I know. So
Hmm.
if we ever switch, it would be like a very difficult switch. It's user friendly, while Unreal Engine definitely does have its perks, looking very good. Portions are much bigger than Unity. I just feel like we could still create um environments work hard enough for it.
Yeah, Unity is a very versatile engine for sure.
Okay, so yeah, kind of the same idea. I have tried out Godot, CryEngine, and Unreal Engine. I actually used Unreal Engine in some of my work as a game developer. I really like the graphics, but I hate the programming. It feels horrible. Well, I don't like it.
I got you. Yeah, I don't have too much experience with Unreal myself. But yeah. So with this game and the development so far, what do you think has been the biggest pitfall you've encountered?
For us, I think it's me and Celica trying to get on a understanding ground. Him and me have a lot of different visions for the game. My intentions of joining this game was to create a game, basically. Ruby Celica wants to work on a game that originates, right? But with how the game is drastically, I just don't know how So we're talking a lot about like what we want to keep on a base. You know, we don't want to just like work on something and then we don't have anything else to work on upon. So I feel like once we figure out, oh, this is the story we want. Oh, this is the fighting we want. This is the gameplay we want. I think we'll start having a better understanding of what we can set in stone for us. We currently still need to figure out the things that are the main objectives, because we're kind of like going back and forth, which is the best for the community and for also us to make. Because we don't want, or at least I don't want to be overly ambitious and be like, oh, this is, I want it like this, but what if we're not capable of doing it like that? You know. So I think it's more so me and Celica probably needs to figure out, hey, this is what we want, this, and we can't add on a lot more than what we already put on. We have to do that afterwards.
Yeah. Well, it's not so bad. I've been in teams where people end up fighting and never wanting to talk again to each other. So I don't think we are at that point.
No, I definitely try to compromise as much as possible. I've told Celica, I've told the other people that I had joined. I don't want to take over the project like that. It's Celica's project. I joined because I do want to help. I truly want this to be a game where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm happy about it. It's a RWBY game. I finally developed a RWBY, right? So I want Celica to at least agree on the idea. You know, I don't want to like shoving it down Celica's throat. Be like, you just take this shit because this is better idea. So Celica and me have to come to an agreement on something. We'll talk to each other, figure things out, make sure it works, and make sure it's good for everyone in the community that loves RWBY. If and then we'll see like how it goes from there. If it's not something that works well with the community, we'll figure out an option, or we just stick along with it. But in the end, me and Celica have to be in agreement. A both way thing, and I don't want to be controlling. Be good on that part.
Okay. My biggest pitfall, I will say, it's not stopping the project. Like, I kind of get demotivated from time to time. It happens when you spend a lot of time in one project. So it's kind of difficult to continue sometimes. But everything for RWBY.
Yeah, no, I totally got you. I actually one of my best developer friends is somebody who I worked on Danger Ducklings with way back when it was an internship project, and we worked on it at where we met. Me and him were both pretty admittably opposites in terms of like a lot of stuff that we talked about. But the thing that made things really work for us was a mutual respect for like the others drive and like where the other person was coming from. So I think you guys will definitely be good as long as you keep that like mutual respect for the other's idea and try to find like what you're able to make together, because what you're able to make together is inherently going to be something completely different than something that you guys make separately. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. That's why I try my best to compromise with Celica. Talk to him and make sure he understands what I'm talking about. And like I listen to what he talks about and like what he wants. Try to figure out how to make it together. So I don't want to have a big fight or anything like that. I don't want any drama between our team. I joined this specifically because I'm like, oh yeah, I can finally have a team instead of doing it myself. So I can bring something on the table with someone else also helping me along. So it's just more so us having to listen to how we're gonna create the ideas, see what we can.
Okay, so Here in the chat, we have what's the primary gameplay loop supposed to be? Well, it's it's a story game. So each character will have a set of quests and a dedicated area where you can explore and test the character's abilities. You meet a character, you accept some quests for it, try teams for it, try to explore their dedicated zone. You get stuck in that zone eventually, then you have to go back and improve that character and their weapons. Once you do that, you can get to the boss fight of the character's area and repeat for other characters.
Honest, I don't know about that game part. It's the first time I'm hearing it, but yeah.
No, but I'm curious, what would you think will be a good gameplay loop for the game?
Like, what do you mean by game? Just like, like.
For example,
playing it?
No, like for example, have you played roguelike games?
Not a lot, no.
Okay, in roguelike games, you start as kind of an empty character. And over the course of your journey, you find weapons, improve your abilities, get some buffs, until you eventually lose, at the point which you gain more abilities, which you can equip on your next playthrough. And repeat.
Oh, so like repeatable.
Yep, that's the gameplay loop.
I don't like. I think the whole repeat situation. I think it's very good. At it, where each character has a certain quest, right, to go upon the story, and you can obtain certain items from those quests, and you get stuck in that zone. It's basically just like a main quest. The way that how, at least I think this is the same way how we're making these characters by doing that. Their character quest abides by their canon lore. At least I think so. Where you have to play their canon lore to those characters to be unlockable. Play them, and then those zones to get their materials to upgrade their weapons.
Okay, sounds good.
Nice. So yeah. I think what is it? It sounds like you guys are still in a lot of like a very exciting phase of this game where you're figuring out a lot of the details. Which I think is really cool. Like there's a number of ways to lean it. Is there anything in particular you're hoping to do for this game that makes it fun or unique?
For me, my idea of like game was the whole fact of in portions of games for fan games for RWBY or just like official games for RWBY, I was like, why hasn't there been like an actual game that follows the story? You know, I feel like a lot of them are just like AUs and such, which are fine. I don't mind them. You know, cool. I just like for the series itself. I love the series. I love the story so much. Like I want to play something. I want to play a game that's like a part of the story where I can be, you know. So I joined this team in hopes of like, oh yeah, let's make a game where you can make it so you're part of the story, and have fun through it. It's not super unique, but it'll probably just be unique to the fact that it's probably be one of the first RWBY followed.
That is a very interesting thing that you bring up, and it actually makes me think about how Grim Eclipse, one of the first, like the biggest RWBY fan games that became official. It started as a recreation of the Red trailer. So it's very interesting how the fan version of that started as sort of working with like established content, and then when they made it a full-fledged game, it became like I believe it's canon, but it's still like its own story between Volume 2 and 3.
Yeah, when I played the Grimmy clips, I was just like, "What's this?" I just jumped into a scene. There's nothing. There's like no cutscenes, nothing that I was interested in. I was like, I want to start at the very beginning. In my hopes, we ever get there, hence that we still have to figure out. My hopes is I want us to start at like those trailers, 100%. Because the trailers are very detrimental to how all the characters all build. You know, like if you just jump into the series itself, you don't understand like why does Weiss have that scratch in her eye, and why does Blake technically want to hide her ears, something like that. You do learn like the Blake situation, but you also learn it during their trailers. The trailers are very interesting way to introduce those characters to a part of the series.
Yeah, and another thing I've seen that's very interesting with the trailers is I've heard of some people who have gone into the show without watching the trailers, and they're like more blindsided by what happens in Volume 3 than generally people who have seen the trailers, because the trailers have a bit of like, I feel like a bit of edge to them, that not like, not to say like Volume 1 doesn't have at all, but I feel like they definitely paint the world of Remnant as a little bit of a perilous place. So the Volume 3 twist comes at less of a shock, if that makes sense for you guys.
Yeah, because you truly see how the world, like an actual sight, that the world isn't just like, oh, we're just a bunch of students who are just gonna train to be huntresses and hunters and stuff like that. But then you notice that in these trailers, they're all kind of like, oh yeah, we fight all these things and we kill them because we have to. While with like Volume 1 and 2, they're kind of like jumpy, get to know the characters, you know? While in Volume 3, they're like, oh, people died.
Yeah.
So it's like a huge like jump from all that.
Yeah, so the next question I was going to ask was, how well does your game fit into canon, or will it split off into its own universe?
My idea is for it to be canon. Celica has a different idea. So talk about it though.
Well, it's an original character, which is introduced after, well, the whole world is an alternate universe where Salem wins the war, and our original character is the last person to die in Remnant. So he's given the chance of going back to Volume 1 RWBY to fix everything. And they have the ability to control Grimm, which in the story plays a huge part in winning the war against Salem. But this game isn't really planned as a story game. I actually kind of want to avoid story because of all the programming problems that it may introduce. So I think we may stay to canon, just for the sake of finishing the game this decade.
So, with our vision, I really want it to be a story game, even though Celica's like, oh, programming. I'm also like, I could program it too. I'm like, I'm here to at least help him encourage, I want to encourage him to work on this project. And I also told him, even if he doesn't eventually start working, or he does eventually start working on it, I'll keep working on it. I'll keep finding someone. I'll find someone. Because I want it to be canon. Because from the stories of Celica, like what's the story that Celica wants to base it off of, it's like, it's not a bad idea for an AU. You know, it's actually very interesting for a post-war Salem, and being able to time travel back. Because I mean, time travel isn't uncanny with the series, you know, as we already seen with Jean. Um, so being able to do something like that will be very interesting as an AU, but it worked well for his Dark Souls like style. You know, I mean, it would work well here too, but the story that Celica wants us to do is has a lot of writing problems as to putting into the game, because we would have to get like an actual. Well, we do have a writer, but we would have to write a whole new story to go along with the canon story, because we have to put in this new character into those stories, and Celica wanted like alternate endings, and that's a lot to do, especially for characters where that Celica wanted for them to have different opinions and different like love hate as what the add-ons call, where you know they have emotions to how you treat them and such, like in a way that in a previous idea that Celica had was if you kill or you attack the White Fang, Blake will start to dislike you for that.
That's really cool.
It's an interesting idea, 100% for that AU, but it's a lot of work because then you have to create a whole new storyline for Blake for that part. I mean, it could be detrimental to the storyline for itself. So we would have to write a lot, and imagine having to do that for every single character. That's a lot of work. And
I mean, that seems like a really cool system, though. Like,
oh no,
the
100%. I thought it was
the scope creep is insane. Like, I'm sure it adds a lot, but still, like, very, very. That would definitely be something I think that adds to what like makes the game fun or unique.
Yeah, I think it would be really cool for a visual novel base, right? But for a big game, for like a game like that we're doing for 3D, we would need a lot, like a bigger team, way bigger team for that.
Yeah, if I may make a suggestion, I think one thing that might be helpful is sort of picking like the thing that the both of you guys want to agree on or like can agree on as being the best in terms of either for the gameplay or for the story. Because I know you guys are throwing around a lot of 3D action games, like between Dark Souls and DMC and Genshin. I think finding like whichever one of those games you really want to like stick closest to, I think that could really help inform what the setting and context that you want to go with is. Because if you're like doing more of, and you saw it already, like if you're doing more of a Genshin, then you probably want to keep like Team RWBY and like maybe lean more canon, because players like in that sort of style would want to bounce around with Crescent Rose and swing around with Gamble Shroud. But if you're doing a Dark Souls, then that sort of depowers the characters. You might want to stick more with an OC and be in more of an AU. Does that make sense for you guys?
Yeah, that's a lot of that at least I've thought about, where go for this original character, it definitely have to be the Dark Souls style of game. I think I was talking to my other friend about how the game is going. They all decided that that kind of thing actually works way better than Dark Souls like games, rather than like game. Going for Genshin, it would rather be original. But my reasoning for rather going for the canon already has a platform. We don't have to create new story unless we like drastically need, right? Because then they'll like have like less workload, you know?
For sure. And
finding a writer to completely rewrite the story is not gonna be easy to find. So that's also a problem. We're not getting paid here too, so we're not. Well, I don't tend to pay anyone. Celica probably doesn't tend to pay anyone either. So we're not gonna pay a writer to completely rewrite all of RWBY just for it to either be used or not be used.
Yeah, and that said, I totally get where you're coming from. I also do have a lot of respect for Ruby's original story, so I never thought of before today how we haven't seen like moments from canon in game form that much. Like I think there's definitely some fights or some moments from the canon that would really rule in a game. That said, I want to shout out Ishmaru in the chat. Um, he was saying that his fan game uh didn't let's see, or sorry, it wasn't until he added story into his fan game that it got like any traction. And I think that is like something that I've noticed in the Ruby fandom is uh sometimes like people can really gravitate towards what everybody's take on Ruby is. Um, Even if it's like it can still be done with a lot of respect to the original content. Um, but like it's just it can be really fun to see AUs and stuff, but not obviously not everybody's cup of tea. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Just story, like practical story wise, I think with like how Ruby start adding stuff, it's like my reason to like Ruby, not because of the characters, it's because the story works so well around those characters. The character stories itself, the development that I truly love about those characters. Those are the reasons why I like them. You know, if their character stories were not like good or anything, I tend to like be neutral about it. But if it's like actually terrible, then I wouldn't really like them to. That's the whole reason why I like them so much. If you were to just make a game just about the characters itself, like nothing, um, I wouldn't be like super interested because of the fact that what am I supposed to be playing? You know, I feel like if there was a story, it'd match well. So Ruby has a very enriched story. So even if you do an AU style game with story, it worked well because you basically use the characters to create a whole story development.
Yeah, and we sort of saw a little bit of that with Ice Queendom.
Yeah, exactly. Ice Queendom isn't fully canon, obviously, and like we get a whole new Grim, we get a whole new character, but it still had like the same aspect of the story to story twice.
I got you. Um, Alrighty. Uh, so to bring things back to some more general topics of game design, if you guys had to give any advice to anyone that's making their own fan game, what advice would you give them?
I think me, I wrote this down. uh, Create a stable base for yourself. Mainly, you know, don't like start the game until you figure out what you want. Because to be honest, once you figure out once you like start the game and it's not what you want, you're gonna have a lot of problems having to redevelop the whole entire game. So a lot of it's for stable footing. You create something, so you start an idea of something, and if you want to stick to that idea and think it's like an actual idea that's super good, that should be enough for you, then stick with it. You wouldn't want to waste 100 hours on a game and then, oh, I don't want this no more. Time to develop another one. That's a waste of time. And also, don't give the idea like, oh, the beginning of the game is gonna look like the final product. No, don't do that either, because the final product is exactly as in name, a final product. Like early development of the game should not look super good, right? It shouldn't be like already finished looking, because basically saying you wasted your time visually, gameplay wise. Um, and then giving yourself like to work on the core gameplay is probably just the best idea. I mean, that's literally the gameplay itself. So once you figure out that and finish it, you can do everything else alongside it. Because then you already create well for that.
Gotcha. Seliker, do you have anything to add to that?
Okay, it's about advice for anyone starting their own fan games.
Yes.
Oh, their own fan games or their own games in general?
The original question was fan games, but really, if I think it could go hand in hand.
Okay, if you're just starting, I would recommend, first of all, do not get your expectations very far, or you may end up like us, creating a lot of projects that you never finish. And try to fully complete your game. That's why the first part is very important. Like they are your first games. They aren't going to be like a AAA product, but we all start like that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people run the risk of their first project being really high scope and it being very difficult for them to finish.
Yeah, and then they never finished it. They start another one, and they get more demotivated, and they end up never completing anything.
Yeah, I do think I think there's a balance to it. I've definitely worked on my fair share of projects that haven't seen the light of day. I think to go along with that, I would say like really taking what like something new from every project that you work on is super important. Because I definitely had projects where, I was going into a new phase of life, and I was like, this might just be the time to like leave this project at the door and work on something else for now. Have you ever come across something like that?
Yeah, twice, I think.
Yeah, it definitely isn't easy, but yeah, sometimes when you're working on a project, uh, I think like it goes to what I said earlier. Sometimes you make 20 bad games before you make a good one, and sometimes
Yeah,
those 20 bad games are the same game.
I was about to tell that. It's very important that you complete your games, because that's how you are going to see your progress really shine.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think an important part of that is making start making games that are completable, like that are small enough for you to be able to complete them, like without it taking like years and years.
Yeah. Actually, the scope of our game may be too much, but it's already a long-term project, so I think it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like you guys are still figuring things out along the way. So I'm super excited to see where you guys take Ruby Requiem. Um, what uh what do you have? Can you and like I said, I know you're still figuring things out. Um, but do you have any ideas of what the like immediate future will look like for your game, or like any big plans you want to share?
Um, so right now we are refactoring the combat system. Because it was mainly more so because it was originally meant for uh Souls Souls like game, and now we have to refactor them to make sure it works exactly fast, and just to make sure that animations work properly as well.
Right.
So we
Yeah.
do eventually plan on refactoring all that, having animations and such in. Um, we do hope that Ruby, the Ruby model that I'm already working on, is finished by then when we release the alpha. The alpha version will only like just combat, tactical story. Just like, oh, let's see how the combat works out, and likes it and such. See like hearing everyone.
I got you. Salaker, do you have anything to add to that?
No. Well, I should not talk. I should not talk a lot about that because I may promise things that I can finish. So yeah, just refactor and hopefully get things done when they are polished enough.
Yeah, we don't have like a technical, so probably take us a bit, but that's definitely something to ask like factor, the combat system.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I'm expecting that maybe in 1.5 months or 2 months we'll have a first playable version.
Nice.
No promises though.
Well, yeah. No promises.
That's cool though, because then you can use that to get more feedback, see what people are thinking about the refactored version of the game. That's definitely super exciting. I'm excited to see what you guys do next with it. All right, so we're almost at 2 hours. I was wondering if you guys had like anything else you wanted to cover. I think we covered pretty much all of the fan game panel questions that we had to discuss.
There are some questions in chat I do like that.
Please take it away.
So Proxy Doug said, "What are the characters?" So we already included Ruby, the Team Ruby, and John. We do plan on actually including all of Team Juniper. When Camp Ramen is when the official time date release of the game, plan on releasing those. So those characters are going to be playable by that time. But those are the main those are the characters that at least we have in our mind. Because a lot of the characters we don't see in entire volumes. Our idea is to only create. Well, my idea is only create up to volume 1, and volume 1. A lot of story. But we're gonna have to cut out content too.
Yeah, I do have some characters I do want to add. I want to add Penny, Neapolitan, and Coco.
Nice. Yeah, I could see them all being a lot of fun in a 3D action fighter. Do you have any like specific ideas with them that you're like excited to try out?
I'm excited to try out like a shooting system for Coco and a flying system for Penny. I know it sounds a really high scope, but I think I can make it work.
Yeah, having Penny fly around would be like really cool. And all that said, her swords I think would also be like a lot to handle for a character.
Yeah. Having to maneuver around all those swords, have not like a combo, but like attack system with it, attack animation, such it all works. Because animators, the animators are gonna have to figure out how to make.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like, in a way, it will be interesting. We'll definitely like Penny. That is like obviously one of the biggest ambition characters for all of RWBY fan games. It seems like, one just wants Penny in the game, but I don't see her. At least for me, at the model of her.
Yeah, it's like more of a wish list.
Yeah, we have like a wish, like a full wish. That's just our wish.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense.
It's a very big wish list. But, well, it will have to cut that list, at least by half. By half.
Yeah, as much as like we want to, like especially with the story, we're actually going for canon. As much as for the story, we're gonna have to cut like lesson parts, because Imagine recreating all the events of Volume 1 game. That's a lot.
Yeah, and that's a lot of locations because you have like
Yeah,
the
so
City of Vale, and then you have Beacon Academy,
yeah,
Forever Fall.
we'll definitely have like certain important parts that really like give out the characters.
Yeah.
100%. I want to do the whole Ruby in the dust story. That'd be like, oh, imagine that's the beginning of the game.
Yeah, no, that would make for a really kick-ass opening.
Ambitions. We'll see. I think I know 100% of a thing I'm going to do is recreate one of the openings for the game.
Ooh, that'd be awesome.
So that's a thing I gotta do.
Nice. So with that, were there any other questions? Any other questions you wanted to catch up on?
Well, I mean, we could explain a lot of things that we plan for the game, but well, that will be updated on our account at the moment they are done.
Yeah, we kind of have like a lot of like stuff on our table there. Oh yeah, we should update. We shouldn't yet. Want to make bigger updates rather than talk about like and be like, oh yeah, this is gonna do this and that every single. So releasing a big update on like, oh, we've done this and what we're working on next is this. So we'll probably like do that on like a.
Nice. Do you have a Twitter in particular you want to plug for that?
Oh, not true, but it's not public yet. Kind of, or we're like working on like making it, and then
Yeah.
making sure like, um, everything that we have is like handled. Oh, here. Well, also eventually that happens too.
Nice.
Yeah. So we don't really want to open like an official Twitter until we actually have the product
Yeah.
publicly released. So, well, you can follow my Twitter if you want to get more updates on the game.
Yeah, the at handles on here aren't just for show. Our Twitter handles.
Yep. You can follow me or Jean.
Actually,
For
follow
updates.
yeah, follow Celicar though. I don't post anything about the Ruby stuff, not yet at least.
Nice, yeah. So follow Celicar on Twitter for updates about Ruby Requiem. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what you guys have cooking with your next update.
Hey, thank you very much.
But yeah, I think I've covered everything I wanted to. If you guys want to start winding the panel down, um, do you have any final notes?
I think here. So, if anybody in the stream wants to join us on working on the project, you can DM us on Twitter. We need more people, especially like designers and coders. A lot of work. If anyone here wants to do it, you can. That's about it.
Nice, Celicar. Do you have anything to add?
No, not on my end.
Yeah. One last thing of note I'll say is Proxy Doug added in chat. Maybe Velvet could be added as a mimic character that reuses animations of other characters. I think that'd be very cool. I think
Velvet, definitely an interesting character. Velvet's the bunny girl, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I was actually in the process of refactoring the code so that the weapons are the ones that set the animations rather than the character. So it could be done.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's a very interesting way to go about it.
I think in a way Velvet would be interesting because if you have a system device, eventually because of like how she can kill Grim and she can summon them with their semblance.
Mhm.
Probably do something in a way from Velvet's like ultimate. Select a character that you have in your roster, copy their weapon, put them here as your ultimate. Use it for a certain amount of seconds until it's done. You go back to your original weapon. Well, not like that. That'd be a cool idea. I could put that down in the wish list. But yeah, that's probably like the only way I could think. Very viable. If her copy every single weapon.
Right, of course.
As much as like some of these characters do want to balance them out for this.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all.
All right. Jin and Selger, thank you so much for being on this panel with me.
Ooh. It's a good
Yeah.
panel. Actually, I didn't really think it would last this long.
Yeah, we had a good chance to go really in depth on a lot of different things. This was a lot of fun though. I'm glad we got to be a part of the Summer of RWBY together.
Yeah, even though mine was last second.
Yeah, it was very fun.
Listening to how you envision your stuff and how you get to ours, like it was a lot very enticing to see everyone's idea of like RWBY.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best parts about RWBY is the creativity it inspires in other people.
Community definitely has off of you like help each other, like even develop more.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
Right.
that concludes Summer of RWBY fan panel, fan game panel 3.
Yeah, thanks again everybody who joined us. Don't forget to follow us at these @s if you want to see more of our projects and stuff that we have in the works. But that's everything I have today. Again, Jin and Selker, thank you for joining me. Was an honor to be a part of this panel. Yep. Yeah. I hope everyone has a great rest of the Summer of RWBY. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, y'all.
Goodbye.